It started with a phone call. Not the kind that gives you good news. Not the kind that you remember fondly. It was the kind of call that stops the world cold. He said the dog had run away. Our sweet Ellie, gone. She was 13 years old, a miniature poodle mix, small, spry, aging with grace, a constant presence in our lives, the kind of dog who followed you from room to room, who curled up beside you when the day had been too much, who sat at our feet during family dinners and waited patiently for bedtime like a quiet guardian. That morning, I had been out of state with my daughter. A quick trip, nothing major, just some time away. A little breath of fresh air while my husband stayed behind. He had work, and more importantly, he was supposed to look after Ellie. When he called, his voice trembled. She bolted. I couldn't catch her. She ran into the bushes at the park and she disappeared. He sounded shaken, panicked, like a man who had just lost something he never thought he'd lose. I believed him. Not completely, not deep down. But I wanted to. My daughter cried herself to sleep that night, clutching Ellie's little stuffed toy like it could magically bring her back. I comforted her, even as something inside me itched with doubt. Something didn't add up. Because Ellie doesn't bolt. She's never once run off, not in 13 years. Still, I tried to silence that voice. I told myself, sometimes strange things happen. Sometimes dogs get spooked. Sometimes they run. But when we got back home, that doubt roared back. He was calm, too calm. While my daughter wandered from room to room, calling Ellie's name, while I cried in the laundry room where she wouldn't see me fall apart, he made himself a drink. He said he was upset. He didn't look upset. He said he'd done everything he could. He didn't act like it. Ever since the pandemic, he'd been working from home, and ever since then, he had grown to resent Ellie. He'd complain about how she'd climb into his lap while he worked, about how she always wanted attention, how she got in the way, how she was always underfoot. At first, I laughed it off. She just loves you, I'd say. She sees you as family. But the truth was, she loved us, all of us, and maybe that's what he couldn't stand. Then came the phone call that changed everything. The landline rang. The one we barely even used. On the other end was an animal rescue in a neighboring state, hours away. They'd found Ellie. She was scared, hungry, but alive. She still had her microchip, and it still had our number. I was stunned, relieved, confused. When I told my husband, he nodded, said, "That's great news." But his voice, flat. His eyes, empty. I asked how she could have gotten so far. "Someone must have taken her," he said, and then dropped her. It didn't make sense. It didn't feel right. And suddenly, I couldn't ignore that voice anymore. So while he went out drinking with his friends a few nights later, I went looking for the truth. I remembered the Dashcam, the camera in his car. He never mentioned it, never offered to show me. But it was there. I downloaded the footage. My hands were shaking. My chest was tight. I didn't know what I expected, but I didn't expect this. There he was, driving. Ellie in the passenger seat, tail wagging, trusting. He wasn't taking her to the park. He wasn't taking her to the vet. He was taking her far, miles out of state, to a place with open fields and no homes in sight. He stopped the car, got out, opened the door, and then he threw something, a frisbee. He yelled, "Fetch!" Ellie, like the good girl she's always been, leapt after it, tail wagging, trusting, and he drove away. No hesitation, No looking back. I had to pause the video. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I couldn't believe what I had just seen. He had abandoned her. Not just lied. Not just made a mistake. He planned it. Executed it. Watched her run off and left her behind. Like she was nothing. When he came home, I confronted him. No more silence. He stuttered. Tried to play dumb. Said something about giving her a better life. That maybe she'd find a farm. A farm. Like she was a cartoon character. Like 13-year-old dogs just stroll up to barns and find new owners. The next day, his mask cracked. He got angry. Not about what he did. About what I did. He said I invaded his privacy. That I had no right to check his Dashcam. That I was the asshole for not trusting him. And then, he said something I'll never forget. He called our 7-year-old daughter an asshole too. Because she cried. Because she missed Ellie. Because in his words, she always loved that dog more than her own father. I didn't respond. Not because I had nothing to say, but because everything inside me had already broken. I sent Ellie to my parents' house, somewhere safe. Somewhere he couldn't touch her. He was furious. Said I was overreacting. Said I didn't understand what he was trying to do. But I understood. He wanted to erase her. Because she was a reminder of something pure. Because he couldn't stand not being the center of our world. And for the first time, I saw him clearly. This wasn't about a dog. This was about control, jealousy, and a deep, terrifying lack of empathy. Now I'm seeing a lawyer. I make more money than him. That's going to make things complicated. But not nearly as complicated as living with someone who can drive away from a living, breathing, loving creature and not flinch. I don't know what scares me more. That he did it. Or that he thought I'd never find out. That he thought I'd believe him. That he thought I'd grieve with him, cry in his arms, while he sat there, stone-faced, knowing where she was, knowing what he'd done. And still, part of me asks the question, not because I don't know the answer, but because I still need to hear it out loud. So, am I the asshole? For checking his Dashcam? For uncovering the lie? For choosing to protect my dog and my daughter over my marriage? Was I wrong to follow my instinct? To choose the truth, even when it shattered everything? Sometimes, it's not the act itself that breaks us. It's the betrayal. The quiet knife of knowing someone you loved could lie with a straight face. This story isn't just about a dog. It's about trust and how fragile it can be. It's about that moment when something small, a shrug, a tone, a silence, cracks the illusion. And suddenly you realize you're not just grieving a pet. You're grieving the person you thought you married. We talk a lot about red flags, about abuse, about narcissism. But what happens when it comes in soft tones, polite words, and calculated cruelty? What happens when someone weaponizes love by taking it away? To anyone listening who's ever had their instincts dismissed, who's ever been gaslit into silence, who's ever had to play detective just to protect the ones they love, let this be your reminder. You are not crazy. You are not wrong. And you are not the asshole. Sometimes, love means doing the hard thing, even when it breaks you, even when it costs you everything. Now, we want to hear from you. Was she wrong to check the footage? Was there any way to come back from this? And what would you have done? Drop your thoughts in the comments. This is AITA Story Vault, where stories aren't just told, they're heard.